Before the video starts, make sure you follow our socials in the description and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Welcome back to your P podcast, people. This is definitely not a second take after I realising to break the ice there. But yeah, welcome back to this episode of your P podcast this week. Joined again by Alex from ARF Football, making his second appearance.
Lovely stuff.
Mate, happy to have you back on, mate. Your episode went down very well. People enjoyed it.
Loved it, yeah. Good to be back.
Good laugh. And you actually made a trip over to here as well.
Yeah,
hour and a half.
done the distance, yeah, not too bad. Meet in the middle.
Meet in the middle. And we're joined as well by Will Buckley, former professional footballer, now football agent. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having me. And yeah, Alex has got me along. Said it
Dragged
went well.
him down.
I mean, it's a good middleman to have in it. It's a good middleman to have. But yeah, you've recently gone into business together, haven't you? It's kind of doing the web sports management.
Yeah, Will, when he came out of retirement, set up, obviously we'll go into it, but set up a football agency, and then obviously with me selling the football boots and having a good few contacts and stuff, Will became mates and kind of chatting through it and then talking about boots and then knowing about what he does.
That's so mental.
Yeah.
How literally just like you selling pairs of boots.
Yeah, it's
You just
great.
made mates with a
Yeah, I know, yeah. But so yeah, then Will said, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and then slowly but surely the relationship blossomed, and yeah, it's been going all right. Yeah, it's going good. About a year since we started kind of talking business over boots, but yeah, it's been going good.
Nice. Well, I mean, people will kind of know you from your kind of football playing days, won't they? So you probably most famous for your Brighton days, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously, yeah, you know from where you did the best as a player, aren't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Brighton was obviously probably the most enjoyable as a player for me, and obviously probably where I did the best, really. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you Premier League. How many Premier League goals did you score? Was it kind of in the 20s?
No, I wish.
So it must be no competitions.
No, to be fair, I didn't really do. To be fair, one regret is probably not playing as well as I knew I could have done. Probably at Sunderland. But obviously at Brighton, I was flying, doing well. Aim was always to play in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Got there, and then probably didn't do myself justice really with my time at Sunderland. But like I said, that's football, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of them, and it's a cruel sport, cruel industry.
You know what I mean? You can't. When I started playing football, the aim was to play in the Premier League. I did that. When I got there, I probably thought I could have kicked on again a little bit, but I mean, no complaints in my career. I can hold my head high and just say, yeah, I did what I aimed out to do at the start. So yeah, buzzing.
There's a lot to be said about, I think, playing in the Premier League. Like, I did a TikTok a few weeks ago about who's the best player you've sold to, and obviously you've got to mention a couple like Tanganga and Elise, but then Billy Sharp was the one that I brought up, because when you actually look at his career,
It's mental. The longevity.
He's probably played 90% of his games in the Championship, but dabbled in the Prem. But the amount of goals and the longevity of it as well, I think that goes as high as saying a career. And we were saying having a chat when Sheffield United played Swansea, and Kyle Norton was playing for Swansea.
Yeah.
And they said, I said, well, he's probably had a better career than Billy Sharp, because he's had all the time at Tottenham and Norwich in the Prem. He's never been below the champ, played hundreds and hundreds of games. So it's a lot to be said about not necessarily playing in the Prem means that you had a good career.
Like, if you look at Billy Sharp, you'd class him as a cult hero, wouldn't you, at Sheffield United?
Oh, yeah.
I think there's obviously players that you see, and you see the name pop up, and you're like, is that the same one that was playing 20 years ago? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're still doing it week in, week out. You know what? It doesn't matter what level sometimes. Obviously, the Premier League's like the elite. If you can do it there, obviously you've made it, haven't you? But I think to do it week in, week out consistently, you still need to be doing the same things with your body, with your training, whether you're playing in League 2, National League, or whether you're playing in the Premier League. There's no difference in that kind of side of it. So, I take my off to players who've been playing for over 20 years at, a very, very good level. So I think, like you say, that's hats off to them, really.
I think it's fascinating as well, especially when you're looking at sort of the professional landscape now. Like 20 years ago, National League was entirely semi-pro, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
And now the whole National League is professional. And you're looking at them and you're like...
There's some very good players there as well. You
unbelievable.
notice now, obviously, moving to the agency side, the amount of players out there that are still pushing, trying to get into the league, that are top players in the National League, it's difficult, really. It's
fascinating. Like, I went to watch, because I mentioned to you, I went to Stockport County the other
Yeah.
and I was blown away by how good the standard were.
The standard, yeah.
Like, they've got a really good midfielder called Will Collar, And you could just tell, like, he could easily play kind of championship level.
Yeah.
And
Well, you look at Wrexham.
Yeah, Wrexham, yeah. Paul Mullin.
Ollie Palmer, Paul Mullin, Tozer, is it one guy with a massive throw?
Yeah.
Mark Howard, he's been everywhere, hasn't he?
I played with
Bolton,
Bolton, yeah. Well, I think Wrexham are going for them players that they know can do it at a higher level, but they're having to obviously pay big money at that kind of level at National League now to try and get out there, but so difficult to get out of that league. Some massive teams in the National League.
Yeah,
Incredible.
huge. Notts County as well.
Notts County. Loads, isn't there?
Yeah, there's history and money in there now, which is absolutely mental. So I talk about like your playing days then. So obviously getting that first break into like the Premier League, like kind of atmosphere really. How different is it kind of playing in sort of like the League One, like Championship sort of stadiums and playing in the Premier League? Is there much sort of like huge difference, or is it just like a little bit of quality really?
Yeah, stadiums and stuff like that. I think from the Championship to Premier League, there's not much difference. You see, obviously, like teams like Sheffield United, them ones that are in and out of the Premier League anyway. Atmosphere-wise, you're not much different. But like on the playing side, it's literally just it's making something happen in that final third is just so much more difficult in the Premier League than it is in the Championship. Not to take anything away from the Championship because it's a top league, but
speed, isn't
when
it?
When you get to that Premier League, the game's a lot slower, but to make something happen, you've got to be so sharp. Do you know what I mean?
Really? The game's slower.
That's
interesting.
100% really
like,
interesting.
Fitness-wise, you need to be fitter, I'd say, in the Championship because the game just non-stop, end-to-end, a lot higher intensity. But them explosive movements are in the Premier League. You know, when you're trying to score a goal, trying to create something, that's where the elite players stand out.
Wow.
That's fascinating. I've never noticed that, but you can kind of think about it because when you watch like the games like the playoff final, which is what everyone tends to watch, don't they? Like they're always end-to-end, constant like battle.
Yeah, non-stop, no time to think. Fitness-wise is unbelievable. I think all the fitness coaches it's kind of like Championship players are like 30% fitter than Premier League players, or they do 30% more running or something like that along them lines, and you can kind of understand why. Because Premier League games are generally quite slow until you get to that final third when you need to make something happen. But I think Championship, the fitness there is ridiculous. I think the quality is probably going up. It's gone a lot higher in the Championship as well. So the games may be going a little bit more like Premier League games now, where it is a bit slower, a bit more build up from the back, passing and stuff like that, and then you need to make something happen. So it's probably going more like the Premier League because the quality is getting higher. But yeah, I mean, League One's a tough league as well.
Exactly. So it'll just shift down, won't it? The fitness
because the quality is getting better everywhere. I think it's just getting tougher and tougher every single league to play in, really.
A mate of mine who plays professionally he's been in League One now and he was in League Two previously, and he said the gap between League Two to League One's massive compared to the gap from National League to League Two. So it's like League Two still kind of like that edit, kick it, pump it, channels and that kind of stuff. But League One, even that jump to League One is so far that's why teams struggle to kind of push even from League One, because you see a lot of teams go from League One Championship like Southampton, you think it's Swansea, Sheffield United a few years ago. That progression can be done, but then you rarely ever see like a League Two push up right
straight
into the Championship.
Definitely,
So
I'd agree with that one.
You talked about atmospheres then, and in the Premier League and Championship not being different. What I think the biggest change in atmosphere in teams is North and South. I've always had it like in my head, being a northerner, that the northern teams are so much more rowdy. Obviously you played at Sunderland, North West a lot, Bolton, and then Watford and Brighton. Do the northern grounds tend to create much better atmosphere?
I think it is. I think football, I mean, in the UK football is football and everybody loves it, but I think sometimes it means more to, like, you see your North East club, Sunderland. Football up there, that's life. Do you know what I mean? You say it, and then when you actually see it, it is. But when I was at Brighton, there's a lot going on in Brighton. Do you know what I mean? So teams, you kind of go. It was just more of an enjoyable atmosphere to play in at Brighton, but they didn't probably have that kind of, we've got to win today, otherwise my whole weekend's ruined. It's kind of like, we're going to support Brighton, we're right behind them. If we don't, we move on. There's next week. Where Sunderland was like, if we don't win today, it's the end of the world. Like, and that's the way they are as fans. So you can see it. All the teams up north, I think there's more there probably is a bit more passion, because it seems to mean a lot more to them sort of clubs, I reckon.
I think for sort of the history and kind of with teams like Sunderland, the history of the town, and it's very working class sort of.
Yeah,
town,
exactly.
So
I think
it really adds to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially so. With like the Sunderland atmosphere and stuff like that, did you ever play in like the Sunderland Newcastle derby?
Yeah, I played at St James's Park.
What was that like?
Yeah, to be fair, that was probably one of the biggest atmospheres I played in, and the most kind of hostile.
Do you know what I think? I don't know whether since you stopped playing, have you sat back and appreciated that you've been so lucky?
Yeah.
Because like we used to play at school, and like we used to like primary school, so it would have been like 8 or 9. But we used to do like a tunnel walkout, and like it was always
was
like
high school
can you
against year
imagine?
10s.
Well, so mate, we used to do Sheffield United fans against Sheffield Wednesday fans.
Jesus,
No,
I kicked
it
off.
was intense game. Talk about high intensity. That was an intense game.
That was your cup final.
9-year-olds. But then a lad in our year went on to play and still plays for Wednesday. We always say to him, like, you've done it. Like, you have walked out, and he's played in the Sheffield derby. Like, he's done it. It must have been like, have you sunk in yet that you've done it, or like you have done like 99% of the boys' dreams?
I mean, yeah, I think so. But I think, when you're in it, like you say, you don't appreciate it, or you don't take on board sometimes how big it is. So I think, every game's kind of similar. You prepare the same. Every game's a massive game. So obviously when you play in them derbies, it's bigger because of the fans and stuff like that. But like I say, until you finish, and then you look back at some of the games that I probably have played in, you probably don't appreciate the time.
Yeah. What's that highlight game for you then now, looking back? What's like that one highlight game where you're like, I'm so happy I was a part of that?
One you'll tell the grandkids.
Yeah.
There's probably one at Brighton, obviously, when I scored the first 2 goals for the winner.
At the Amex?
Yeah, at the Amex, the opening of the ground. That's
First-
obviously...
No, that's history, innit?
First £1 million signing for Brighton.
Yeah, that one. But
That's
obviously
a Twitter bio thing, that, innit?
yeah, when I was 18, I played for Rochdale. Obviously, lesser. It was a League 2 playoff final, but for then, being 18, that was like the biggest thing ever. So them 2 games, probably, when I look back, obviously the Brighton one was more kind of probably better for me, because obviously I was more a bigger part in the game. But obviously the one for Rochdale was unbelievable as well, to play at Wembley. So yeah, them
Amazing.
2 really.
Playing at Wembley's, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, Rochdale got a decent youth set up, haven't they, Rochdale, if you think about it? Because they had that Matheson, is it called?
Yeah,
Lad who
went
played
to
at
Wolves,
Old Trafford.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they've got that kind of development.
They've always
around.
a few players, Glenn Murray, Grant Holt, some really good players came through. I don't really know why. I mean, the setup, I wouldn't say the setup's like brilliant. It's similar to probably your Oldham, all the Northwest teams. But I think maybe just the catchment, release players that get released from United City, maybe then go down to Rochdale. I don't really know, but they do. They have done well recently.
Did you ever have like an old boy, like an old scout that? Because you hear about these scouts that have been at the clubs for years. That so many players,
gems everywhere.
so many players like thank them for the career.
I don't really know whether they just got lucky or whether there was someone who was just plucking players from everywhere. I don't.
Because
really
they've
know.
always been League 2, haven't they? Really?
Yeah, League 1, League 2.
In and
They've
around
always
there.
fluctuated in and around there. I mean, my mate's a massive Oldham fan, so he's going to be listening to this going,
There's a
fucking Dale. Straight away.
I'm going watching Oldham actually on Chesterfield away.
Ah, you're nice.
So obviously I grew up an Oldham fan as well, being from Oldham. It's like me and my dad still go every now and again.
So what's that like being an Oldham fan, but playing for Dale, that's it.
I know, yeah, to be fair, I don't know, because obviously I never met. Obviously, I liked Rochdale, I liked all the local teams really, but there was the derbies, Rochdale, Bury, when they was in the league.
I went Bury away with them.
Did you?
Yeah, with Oldham.
It was obviously quite hostile as well, even though obviously it's lower leagues. Yeah. But like I say, I've always been an Oldham fan because I used to play for them as well. But
that's fascinating. That being able to playing for you, I suppose that you're in the professional mindset. It's a career for you at the end of the day, but I couldn't imagine playing for United.
Well, again, the same lad I was on about that we went to school with, when he started at Wednesday, he said he had a couple of seasons in, before he kind of broke into the team, he was like second choice keeper, third choice keeper, like 19. And we said, like, what if Sheffield United came in, would you ever go for them? He was like, yeah, 100%. He was like,
you couldn't believe it.
Yeah, we were like, no, you wouldn't. He was like, mate, it's a career. And I think that goes about you saying that, like, when you're in it and you don't realise how great it is. But you see a lot of the bad. And like anyone's job, you get the the niggly bits, and you get the annoying this, that person's annoying, that one's annoyed you, this is annoying you. So you get all the bad bits. You don't get to see like the. So he said like when playing for Wednesdays that he's seen the bad side of him. So you kind of not a fan because of that, but you kind of being a boyhood fan kind of goes out the window a little bit.
Yeah, I think it does take the gloss off it sometimes playing for your hometown team. If it doesn't go well, and if it goes well and the fans love you and stuff like that, but you can never predict that, do you know what I mean? Whereas you don't know how it's going to go. Once you're a player, the fans probably don't care whether you was a boyhood fan or not. Do you know what I mean? If you're doing well, they'll love you. If you're doing rubbish, they'll give you a bit of stick. So sometimes that can
take that pressure element, isn't it, really? I feel like there's more pressure on playing for your hometown. Like people like Steven Gerrard, that's mental. The fact he played at his hometown team for so long, with the pressure that's on him all the time, and he still played to that high level.
But that goes with what Will just said about fans loving you and it going well. Like Gerrard, it was always going to be good because he was always one of the best players. Fans always loved him. But then you look at Conor Cody, came through at Liverpool. Never got in the squad. Like never got the chance. Went out, grafted, went on loan, League One, and now he's signed for Everton.
It's mental, isn't it? And he's one of our better players, isn't he? As well, Conor Cody. It's fascinating. So, like, I want to know a little bit more about sort of like the transfer sort of scenario when you're going through like Premier League and Championship. So, there's a lot of focus on agents at the moment. So, is it always the agents that make the first contact, or is it usually a club that contact the agent, or how does it usually work?
Well, I think legally, so a buying club is not supposed to approach like the player's agent, but I think it's impossible not to, because obviously if you're a buying club, you're interested in a player, there's a lot of processes that you'd have to go to before you can agree, does this player want to come to us anyway? So I think they're checking with the player's agent to see if the player wants to come to them before going through all them steps of putting a bid in, speaking to the club, all them processes. That could take weeks really, and then the player might turn around and go, "Oh, I don't really want to go there anyway." So I think it's a bit of a stupid rule, to be honest with you.
I agree.
With the old tapping up situation and stuff like that, I think you've seen Ashley Cole and that kind of scenario came out massively. But I think it probably goes on in every single transfer that there is. I think it's just a time saving thing. Does this player want to come? We'll speak to his agent, make sure he does. These are probably going to be the wages. Is he going to accept that? Do we bother going to the next steps? If that's a hurdle that they don't get past, then it saves weeks of talking to the club.
Of course,
a fee for the player, maybe might not even want to go anyway. So I think there's something that they need to look at there, to be honest with you.
It's interesting because you see on Sky Sports News a lot at the moment now. More and more prominent nowadays, they'll say terms have been agreed, but a fee has not been agreed yet. And I always find that fascinating because you hear about the legal aspects of it, but maybe just that switch of modern day sort of insight. At the end of the day, what's the point in spending 2 weeks to agree a fee for your player to say, nah?
Yeah, exactly. So I think they just need to kind of brush over that rule and just make sure, obviously, no one's getting in trouble or doing anything wrong in that aspect. But I think it's just one of them that is an unwritten rule where it's going to happen anyway, people just kind of get over it.
There's so many factors to bear in mind, and like even if you just look at it from the player's point of view, say when you went from Rochdale's to Watford, like you had a missus, you'd have to move, you've got not even just logistically, but then you've got like your family, like is there anything going on in your family, like is your parents alright, your siblings, like do any of them rely on you? You've got all that to think about. It's not necessarily just like you get to sign for a championship club on X amount a week. You get good. It's like, oh, it looks good money in a good club. Why would you not move? It's like, well, you've got your life, haven't you? Like you can't.
Sometimes obviously I look back at some of the moves that I made, and I'm like, to think about doing that now with 2 kids and being settled, them in school and stuff. It's like no way.
Brighton
no way
Sunderland,
I could do it.
Yeah.
But then obviously when I was playing, it was just me and my wife then. So we was like, well, wherever we need to go, we go. Do you know what I mean? You're there. We was in bloody Brighton 1 week. 2 days later, we was up in Sunderland looking for an house. It's like, but if you've got like a family, you get a little bit older, you're settled somewhere. It's not an easy move. Even if it's double your wage or something like that. You've got to think a lot about where you're going to be living, the city that you're going to be living in. Are you going to enjoy it there? That's what obviously probably
teammates,
fans don't look
the
at that.
manager, like all them. Like, are you going to get on with them? all sorts in there. But
yeah, there is a lot more that goes on rather than just go, oh, you're just going to that club and that's...
You never hear about that, do you, really?
No.
You don't hear about that sort of side.
Well, there's probably a lot of unsung heroes at clubs as well, like player liaisons, stuff like that. When you get there, help you find somewhere, and you never, obviously, the outside world would never know about them sort of people, but they're massive within a club.
You've heard about players like having it in the contract that from when they're coming from abroad, like they want the parents to have a house.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
Like not necessarily pay for it, but you need to find me
Gabriel
a house for
Jesus,
mine.
he sent he had like a portion of his salary went back to Brazil, and he had it in his contract.
Wow.
He had to do that.
Yeah.
Because he came over when he was 19, 20 to City.
Yeah.
You see it more and more. I like Ben Foster at the moment because he's breaking that fourth wall with his podcast, isn't he? Where he's talking about the unwritten like little things in contracts. Like, did you see about his United to Watford loan, where he had in his contract where he had to play if he was fit.
Yeah,
And
I
Watford
can imagine.
weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
I've heard of one when for a player, I won't say the club either, but he had to be the highest paid player on the pitch on that squad that he was in.
See that? People
So
do
when he
that
signed
on foot.
someone, he was buzzing.
Yes.
He's like, oh, it's that signed someone who's on more than me, and then mine goes up.
Unbelievable.
I wish I did that on my work, to be honest with you. That happened on Football Manager, because I play a lot of Football Manager, and when that happened, straight away I'd take out the contracts and I'd lock it and say, you're not having that. I'm like,
Unbelievable. Can you imagine that?
Good agent then, isn't he?
Well, yeah, I
He's a
guess.
great agent.
I couldn't believe it when I heard that.
Yeah.
Did you have any like really weird contract clauses? Because I know what Foster has said, like you have like a relocation sort of cost.
Yeah,
Is there any like really weird like contract clauses that sometimes you have?
I don't know. Yeah, the relocation allowance is brilliant, really. Obviously, that's one that you want to get in for your players. So that just helps with the move, because you obviously don't realise how much it costs to move house, to obviously pay for your rent then. Obviously, your removals, vans, stuff like that. You know what I mean? It costs thousands of pounds. To have that in for the player is obviously good. Weird ones, no. Just obviously like your standard. If you play a certain amount of games, then your wage goes up, stuff like that. But
I think that's
quite
fair,
standard,
isn't it?
really.
That's on
I think that's
performance.
fair.
Well,
Isn't it?
a lot of clubs do like it as well, because it's incentivised. So you might sign a contract, that player might be like, oh, buzzing, I'm happy with that now.
Yeah.
I'll relax a little bit, not sit back and relax, because nobody does that anyway. But if you've got like, you're always chasing certain amount of appearances to get to that next level, it gives the player something to obviously want to play every week for anyway, which obviously they do. But if you've got something to aim for salary wise, then you've got a little bit more to give, haven't you?
Yeah.
I don't think it ever goes away, that being salary driven, because people say like when one of the big boys goes from like 150 grand and he moves because he can get 250 grand a week, people are like, oh, but 150 grand, he's sorted already, why does he want to? I'm like, I don't care how much money you've got, if you're getting offered that so much more money, even if it's 8 grand a week to 10 grand a week, it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
like,
It is.
Well, you think how short, obviously, a footballer's career is. I mean, on average, I think it's like 6 or 7 years, like, you know, across all the leagues. So when you see players go and, you know, fans go, oh, he's gone for the money. Well, yeah, he probably has, because he obviously he needs to look after his family at the end of the day. In 10 years' time, his career's going to be over. He needs to look to do something else. Whereas, obviously, you know, if you're in a trade or whatever you're doing, you're looking at a 50, 60-year lifespan of working out. So you've got to take that into consideration.
Because I bet there's no player that thinks, right, if I'm going to earn £1 million over the next 10 years, which isn't actually like too much money, like in the grand scheme of life, but 100 grand a year. So I'm going to earn £1 million in the next 10 years. That could last me another, you know, that could last me 30 years. So I'm going to live on, you know, 2 grand a month, like, you know, quite a reasonable amount, like the average. You never hear, like, people are always living within the means. So if you're on 10 grand a week, you're spending 10 grand a week, whether it's rent or cars. And then when it does
your
go
lifestyle ups with how much money you earn, doesn't it? So it's hard to say,
Put it
or
aside.
just keep driving this car or this size of house. If you're getting that amount of money, you want to live kind of the high life, don't you? You want to enjoy spending your money, but you've got to be kind of mindful of this isn't going to last forever. It's 10 years max, and that's maximum, really. You know, you get the odd player who plays for 20 years.
Yeah, but it's very rare.
Nowadays. There's a lot of players that maybe are on the scene for a couple of years and then you don't see them again. So you've got to be careful, really.
I find it interesting with the sort of the position you played as well, because you were a winger, weren't you, like a right-footed winger. you tend to find that wingers have a shorter. They do have a shorter sort of career span because there's always that young 18-year-old quicker guy in you, innit?
Yeah.
So did you find you have to adapt your playing style as you kind of went through your career?
I think a little bit, yeah. I think after, I got quite a lot of injuries, a lot of hamstring injuries, which obviously affected my speed a little bit, probably getting into my late 20s, 30s. So I think you're always probably thinking, at one point you're going to start losing your pace. So you're probably thinking, well, I need to start doing something a little bit different. A lot of my game at Brighton was, I know I'm going to be quicker than the left back or whoever it is. I could just knock it past him. But when you get to a point where it's like, I probably just can't do that every single game. So then you
Gareth Bale stood opposite you and you're like, here we go.
So then you're thinking, right, well, what can I do? Do I need to come inside? Do I need to be a bit more of a ball player rather than just running in behind? Do I need to come to feet? So I think, like say, if you're a centre mid and you've never had pace anyway, and that's not your game, they're the players that obviously play for longer. Centre backs that don't rely on pace. Well, obviously wingers, 90% of them are quick. So that's your game.
That's your
really.
short span of being elite. Like that's that difference, isn't it?
Yeah, especially when you're looking, because it's also a bit weird, because as you're going down through the leagues, obviously, because that's a natural sort of progression as you're kind of losing speed, but you've still got, because you need to be fitter to play in the lower leagues as well.
Yeah.
So it's even harder, isn't it, if you're thinking about it?
Yeah, I think, like you say, as you go in, like say, as you drop down, you need to get fitter, but obviously you probably don't need that explosiveness as much as obviously you do to make a difference in the Premier League, Championship, but your fitness has got to be there no matter what league you're in really now.
Is that why you see a lot of strikers drift back into centre midfield, like Rooney?
Yeah,
like
possibly.
Harry Kane's doing it now, isn't he?
Yeah, drifting back a bit, just to kind of dictate.
Yeah, because I think you need that explosive power when it comes to that last little bit, getting your shot off, like getting past someone to put a cross in. That's where it matters. Being that little bit, that half yard quicker than the defender to make something happen. So you need that. Whereas obviously if you're playing centre mid, centre back, you don't necessarily need that 90% of the game.
Yeah, of course. Who were them like horrible fullbacks? Obviously, talk about pace. Who were them fullbacks you looked at and you thought, oh, for God's sake, I've got him next week?
I think just fast ones, really.
You know what I mean? Was there any you could like think of like back in when you played? Because you played like it was like early 10s, wasn't it? Like late.
Yeah.
It was like early 10 sort of era.
Yes.
Would that have been Bale's sort of era at Tottenham? Because did he play 10, 11?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was obviously.
Yeah, he changed his game, didn't he? About 2012 and 13. Was that Inter Milan when he suddenly became a winger and not a left back?
Yeah, he was just literally just knocking it past people.
You had people like Clichy as well, didn't you? Who was quite quick.
Yeah, I played against him actually. He was really good, Clichy, for City.
Well, he's won what? How many Premier Leagues did he win? Did he win the Premier League at Arsenal? Or was it too late?
He was at Arsenal, wasn't he? Yeah. Where did he go after
Probably
that?
did, yeah. He was at City, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was at City. He won a few at City. It's fascinating when you're looking back at like some of the players and you're like, wow.
Yeah, just them like aggressive, quick.
Not going to be soft, let you pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't really bothered playing against, there's probably like fullbacks that you say like are unbelievable, but you probably think them as
like a Leighton Baines.
Yeah, like on the ball. So I'd probably enjoy playing against someone like him because he weren't the quickest.
Yeah.
But obviously his quality on the ball, but that doesn't affect a winger.
Yeah,
obviously
of course.
that makes no difference to me whether I go and put pressure on. Makes no difference if he plays the ball down the line or he's no good on the ball. When I get it, I need to be able to go past him. And if he's quick and aggressive, it's obviously harder for me. So obviously them sort of probably defenders don't get recognised as well as good players.
I agree.
Because people are not bothered about if you can defend. They just want to know whether you can assist, put crosses in, stuff like that.
Yeah,
So,
we look at him now, and Kyle Walker was a good one for that, of being classed as a good fullback for going forward.
Yeah.
When you look at like Trent, like he gets a
always
lot
getting
of
slated,
stick.
isn't he? But he's an absolutely unbelievable right
Then
back.
you go the other
So
way,
it's
look
like,
at Reece James or Wan-Bissaka, who gets criticised for being an unbelievable defender, but crap going
saying,
forward.
he's not good enough going forward. So I think that I
What
suppose
you-
the game's
it's what
changed a
you
little
want.
bit as well, hasn't it? Where fullbacks
definitely.
are they're like attackers now more, aren't they? Whereas when I was playing, it was probably defend.
Yeah, like
get the ball, give
the
it
ones
to
we've
him.
named, really, haven't we? Like
Yeah.
Clichy, your Baines, like people at the
Just
top of the
quick.
level, they were good defenders at that, weren't they? And now, like City play our left back and right back plays centre mid. Like Rico Lewis, he's not a full back, is he?
No, it's
He's not.
unbelievable.
Well, he plays right back, but I've never seen him give the ball away once. Play for City this year, and he just plays in centre mid, like alongside Rodri, and you're like, you're right back.
Yeah.
Imagine that 10 years ago. You get clattered in the first.
Yeah.
First couple.
The game's like you said, the game changed. He's done it over the years. Different positions are required to do different things. I think now you're seeing it more that defenders are probably more attackers than they are defenders, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I want to just, before we finish part one, I want to touch on like the managers you had as well, because you had some like quality managers. Who had the biggest sort of impact in your career, do you reckon?
Oh, definitely Gus Poyet.
Was it?
Yeah, Brighton, yeah. Tactically, when I went to Brighton, I'd never seen anything like it, really. Some of the things that he was doing, the way he was getting us play out from the back, stuff like that, things he wanted me to do. It was like, he wasn't bothered about me defending. He was like, you stay up, we'll get the ball to you, and you go and attack. And that was like a dream for a winger. So, yes, tactically, he was by far the best manager I had.
That's massive. That's trust, that, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
Who was up at Sunderland?
So we had Gus before he got sacked, and then...
Did he take you up there?
Yeah, so Gus took me, yeah.
What a guy.
So I've got to give him credit.
Surprise is your favourite.
I wonder why. No, we had Dick Advocat came in as well.
He was a bit
but that's mental, isn't it?
He was good, like, tactically. I mean, he obviously knew what he was doing, but probably not as good as Gus. But as a man manager, the players just responded to him. Like,
really?
Unbelievable, yeah. He got you going, do you know what I mean? He was like... He felt like he really cared about you, and that's kind of the players give that back then on the pitch. So I think that's how we got out of relegation trouble that season when he came in as well.
Brilliant.
Like, you're literally running through walls, aren't you? I think you find that more because once you lose your dressing room, you're kind of like on your way out.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened with Gus. To be honest with you, up at Sunderland, the players kind of just weren't playing for him. And it showed on the pitch, and then obviously when Advocat came in, it just changed overnight. Where obviously everybody wanted to play for him, work hard. Do you know what I mean? Just running harder sometimes can make a massive difference, and that's what it was. That's what kept Sunderland up that season, really.
It's fascinating that as well, because you never kind of you see it a lot of the times, like with a new manager effect. But do you reckon sometimes with some clubs you just need that kind of breath of fresh air, that different sort of viewpoint? Like, does it get stale, or?
I think it does. Yeah, I think you see it from. Sheffield United have had loads of different managers haven't they, all the time, and sometimes it's not the best manager, but it might be someone who's good, just a good person, knows how to talk to players, knows how to treat 100%. The ones maybe that are not playing to keep them on board, stuff like that. So,
because they are the reason players play a certain way.
Yeah.
They're the stop, aren't they, at the end?
Yeah,
they're the ones that say they not necessarily decide the tactics because they've got all the coaches and stuff, but they have the final word going out into the tunnel. Like, they are the ones you respond to how they are. I find it interesting that, like, I was speaking to a guy who's a player in the Championship, and he's saying that there's a Moments of Truth podcast where it goes behind the scenes of Rotherham and Oxford United, about the back half of a couple of seasons ago when Rotherham went up from League One. Oxford are about just on the edge of the playoffs. Rotherham are just on the edge of automatic and playoffs, bouncing in between. And I said, like, I texted him saying, thank you. He recommended the podcast to me. So I said, not sure about Carl Robinson, who was the Oxford manager. I said, I don't think I'd get on with him. I like the sound of Paul Wharton, who was the Rotherham manager. And he says, I'm the complete opposite. He was like, I love the sound of Carl Robinson. Like, he's feisty, he goes at you, but Paul Wharton's like very polite. He wants to be everyone's mate.
Yeah,
is
he
what
was
he
more.
said.
Yeah, because you obviously told me to listen to that, and what I got out of that was Paul Wharton was kind of probably more of a modern coach the way they are now, where it's like, you've made a mistake, I'm not going to shout at you. Like, what can we do next week to make you better?
Yeah. Whereas
obviously Carl Robinson might have been like absolutely hammering you.
Yeah.
But if you respond to that, who's to say which is right or wrong?
So that's like a massive thing about. I think that's why I'm so set on, like, managers should get given time.
Yeah, like, bring in your own players. I think your own players are key. Like, obviously Gus bringing you in, like, you see certain players gravitate to certain managers.
Exactly. The manager knows how. Well, a good manager should know which player responds to what kind of criticism, or kind of getting behind them and giving them a bit of confidence, kind of thing. So I think that's a key thing as well.
Interesting. Well, I think we should have a little break, and then we'll come into part two, and we're going to dive into the agent world, because I am fascinated, because I've never spoken to a football agent before, and I've got no idea what your day-to-day life or even anything how it works. So we'll dive into that in part two. Part 2, welcome back. Had a little break there, nice little chat. We were talking a little bit in a break and kind of wanted to dive into sort of like the aspect of a football agent. First of all, you don't see a lot of pro footballers going into agents. You usually see them going into coaching, don't you?
Yeah.
So what was that kind of like spark that made you just go into agent rather than coaching?
You know what? Coming towards the end of my career, that was something I always wanted to do. I had the interest of it, obviously when I was playing, like the contract side, stuff like that. It just interested me. The coaching, it never really took to me just because of the hours that I knew I'd have to put in. So once I finished football, I thought, I want to spend more time at home. I don't want to be travelling with... Might have been the travelling that I did throughout my career, maybe, the moving away, stuff like that. So yeah, that side was just... Once I finished, I thought, obviously I love football, I want to stay in within football, but I don't want to commit to the same hours as a footballer, going away every weekend, and even more hours, to be honest with you. I see some of my mates, obviously, that have gone into the coaching now, and obviously they work twice as hard as they did when they was a player, so...
Yeah.
I mean, that is a tough industry as well. Again, you've got to move where the jobs are. So if you get a job offered down south, you've kind of got to go. Whereas I wanted a bit more freedom with what I was going to be doing. So it was the perfect one, really. Staying within football, because I love football. I think I can give back to football, but on a different level.
Oh, fascinating as well, because you never really hear about it, do you? But I suppose the football agent landscape must be hard to get into, because every professional footballer's probably got an agent, haven't they?
Yeah.
Already. So how hard is it to kind of attract these players to kind of come and sign for you?
Yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, we've kind of noticed that.
Still trying to figure it out.
We're still getting there slowly, but
it's so competitive.
I think you don't realise how many big and good companies there is out there. Even when I was a player, you probably didn't realise the scale of these businesses, basically. When you start taking an interest in business, like obviously I've learned probably a lot off you see these companies and how they're ran and like the turnover they're making. Literally, like the organisations, they're massive. So we're trying to compete with these big companies, but we feel like we're doing something a little bit different than what they're not doing. So I think in time it'll get noticed and we'll be big soon.
It's got to be a gradual process though.
Yeah.
It has to be, because you've got to kind of start when they're kind of breaking through, aren't you, from the start off with? Because you're not going to go out and get a Billy Sharp, are you, who's had his agent for 20 years?
No.
Like.
Well, you said it to me, like, because at one time we were saying, like, let's get into the 16, 17, under 18s, like, and we'll hit a diamond at some point. But the problem with that is that legally you're not allowed an agent till you're 16. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, 16, but that has to be through the mum and dad as well.
Oh, so you need to get parents.
So
first year, 16-year-olds, you've got to go through the parents and you can't have any contact with them before. But the problem with that is that these big agencies have got a scout for each club, pretty much, each big club at least. So like Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal, City, United, Newcastle, all these big clubs with the pedigree of an academy, they have a guy on the sideline of every youth game, big trench coat, big puffer coat on, branding on, giving out cards to parents. So they're there already. So like us dropping them a DM or trying to, getting in touch with them they're just not going to be incentivised to come to us to a certain degree, because it's so competitive and they've got that scale to be able to kind of just drag everyone into him. So that's quite a tough one to go at. And I think what really stuck with me is when we first got talking, is you were saying you want to do it differently, but like, because there's this perspective of agents being the bad guy and money driven, not bothered about the players' welfare. It's all about the best money for the best club, what they're going to gain. But you were saying that you want to do it different. You want to give to the players. You want to give them so much more. The advice that you can give, the goodies that we can do for the boots and all that kind of stuff, and brand deals and stuff like that. And like we were talking earlier about a barber, like knocking 20% off. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but people like getting a bit of discount.
Everyone wants something that's free, don't they?
Exactly. I think the more you can give back to the players, because I think obviously there is that kind of perception of the agent doesn't really do anything, but until you come onto the agent side, you realise that the agent does do a lot. But the more we can give back, as in returns, like discounts obviously off ARF, anything that we can help with, that's what I wanted to do. That was kind of why I wanted to get into it, to give more back to the player, and then obviously they'll respond. In general, they're going to repay you because you're treating them well, and kind of everyone's
word of
happy
mouth
there.
is key,
Exactly,
innit?
yeah.
It's so key.
Yeah.
It's you got to kind of break into the dressing room, don't you? Because we talked about it a lot with the boots. Once you break into the dressing room, it's kind of half the steps done.
Yeah.
But actually breaking in there is
If
probably
you do a good job for
hardest
someone,
part.
they're going to tell people about it, and that's
100%.
kind of the aim of what we're doing now, which is obviously just you've just got to give it time. Obviously I wanted it to go like that. Everybody does with a business that you start, don't they? But you realise that you can't do that. You've got to have kind of what have you been doing for the last 2 years. All right, there's whether it's on Instagram where they can see what we're doing, different kind of avenues where people can see what you can offer these days. So you need a bit of a backlog of what you've done and how you've helped certain players, so then people can go, all right, yeah, this is what he's doing, and it looks good. I'll get on board with that.
It's reputability, longevity, trust. Like you've got to have that, and you're not going to have that coming straight out the bat saying, "I'm a new agent, come to me," because you're going to have that perception, wrong or right. The agents do have that perception, so it's going to be, we're here operating a couple of years now. We've got some great lads on board.
I was having a look down
Good
at
lads.
your Instagram about all the lads you've got on. You've got lads at like Stoke and
Yeah.
kind of up and down sort of a country at good high levels there, aren't
But
you?
you talk about giving more and helping the players, and I know it's just an agent doing the job, but I'm sure Ben won't mind me saying when you were his agent at Rochdale, Ben got released at 18.
Yeah, under 18s,
And didn't have a club, and Will got him a move to Stoke, and he's now in the under 23s, flying, been on the bench for the first team. So
that
that's
lad from Scunthorpe, was it, at the weekend?
He's just gone out.
Is he keeper?
Yes.
Yeah, just signed for Scunny,
Aaron was at Stevenage, and he was another guy that I met through the boots, and he lives in South Yorkshire but travels to Stevenage every week. So, and he came to me, and I said, like, just in passing, like, oh God, that sounds like a nightmare. You've got to do 3 hours each way every day. He did it every day. He's got a new.
That's just going on to players as well, isn't it? Like,
oh God,
what obviously fans probably won't realise that a player might live 2 hours away from training, going into there every day, and then obviously travelling down to the game, staying over on a weekend, even for a home game. Players who don't live local have to stay over in a hotel, being away from the family. So I think lower down the leagues you go as well, that's like a bigger burden on people.
It's important, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need to play in them local.
So I think as an agent as well, you've got to recognise that, see where the player's going to be happy, see if they're going to, because a move might come up for a player, but they're a bit of a home bird kind of thing. They want to stay within the family and friends that they're happy there. Might be in Scotland or something. Might be a good move football wise, but you might think, are they gonna adapt to that? Are they going to be happy up there? Because at the end of the day, you've got to be happy. If you're happy off the pitch, I noticed it in football. If you're happy off the pitch, you're a better player on it. So we've got to. That's my job, and obviously Alex's job now. He's obviously still learning that side of it, but we can kind of learn off each other as like this is what the players need. We need to be there for them.
Yeah, it's on top of being. You basically, like Joey's saying about being a player liaison officer.
Yeah.
You are essentially, as an agent, a liaison officer, aren't you?
100%.
Yeah.
It's, I don't mind saying, it's like we are not in it for the money. Like we want to do it to help lads out, and the satisfaction of seeing Ben do well at Stoke and Aaron be closer to home at Scunthorpe, like to have been able to have a tiny hand in helping with any of that, it's so rewarding. And if it can in 10 years' time be a successful business, then brilliant. But I don't mind me saying, we're not going to be making money, and for the first few years and stuff, we want to put it all back in to help the players, whether it's with bits and bobs off the pitch or paying for the family to go out for a meal or something like that. They don't need us to do that, but that's just a nice thing. It's just like, you're helping us, we're helping you. If you can recommend us to your teammates or pals or anything like that, then it's just a win-win. So really,
it always helps, and like word of mouth is key in every industry nowadays. It's just huge. I've noticed this. Like, I love when I get guests on where it's been word of mouth recommended, because I know they're going to be sound already.
Yeah.
Because sometimes with like the line of work, I need to message people randomly. or people I've followed.
Yeah.
It's a risk. I don't know if they're going to be
Yeah.
sound. They may come on and may just not enjoy it.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's someone from someone else, straight away you're like, right,
Yeah.
you can relax. It's going to be.
You know they're in it for the right reasons, then, don't you?
Exactly.
Know they want to be there. You know, whether it's us or whether it's a player that we get who's messaged us rather than we're kind of approaching them as well. That always seems to make the transition a lot easier as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it helps being a former player as well? Do you reckon other players kind of said, right, he's going to have my best interest in it because you know?
Yeah, I think, like I said, that was obviously one of the reasons, again, with staying in football, but not going down the coaching route, like, what can I offer back to the player? And it's like, everything they're going through from 16 to all the career, really, I've already been through it.
Yeah.
So certain situations that they come to me with, I'll go, well, this is how I approach that. Was it the right way or was it the wrong way? And then I'll give my advice of what I think they should do. And generally, I'd like to think I've given the right advice because I've been through it.
You've been there, done that. Yeah.
So I think that's one of the main things, kind of what I can offer from being an ex-professional, really.
That's fascinating as well, especially when you have a look at, like, 'cause at the end of the day, with these young lads coming through now, it's even more competitive than it was. Back in your days.
Mentally so hard as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, you just said about the mental health guy that you had on, like that. These days, obviously, when I was probably coming towards the end, social media was getting massive.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas all these players now, from 16, they've probably got an Instagram. So it's like, if they have a bad game, someone's going to tell them about it. You know, whether it's some random fan or whatever, but that can affect you. Do you know what I mean? I've had it before. It doesn't matter who this person is, you're never going to see them. But if they say, you've had a bad game, you kind of go, yeah, he's probably right, or whatever, and it affects you. So I think you've got to be able to deal with stuff like that as well, which is a massive one moving forward.
Do clubs do a lot to kind of help with that? Do clubs like put on sort of like sessions to help like mentally with like stuff like social media being massive?
I don't think so. You know, I mean, they might do. Maybe
nowadays,
in these last couple of years,
yeah,
but certainly when I was playing it, that was never a thing. Really, I think unless the clubs are really on it and really advanced in this kind of area, it's kind of not on the top of the list. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, businesses, they're like, is the player playing well? They probably don't think, what are other things that could affect the performance? One of them being massive social media these days.
Yeah.
So maybe the clubs that are forward thinking now might have something in place. You'd like to think so, but I'm not too sure whether a lot of them do.
Not too sure.
No.
Did you ever get like media trained as well? Because obviously media is probably just as important part of sport nowadays as it is. Sort of, and at the end of the day, you need to be able to say the right thing. Like we were talking about, like Nathan Jones and like how we slip up sometimes in there as well. So did you ever get sort of like media trained? Because obviously you had a media team.
No, not at all. I mean, never came across it. But my mate always says that. Best way go on about your media training. I was thinking, we've never been told what to say or anything like that.
That's fascinating.
I think you just kind of pick up, you know, obviously people, they go, footballers, he just says this. They all say the same thing. But I think you're obviously conscious about what you're saying, whether it's after a game or whatever. But you've never been told what to say. It might probably come across like that, but no, I mean, we never had it.
There's so many. A lot of interviews are the same. Like, you know, the boys dug in, good 3 points.
But at the end of the day, it's just 3 points.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a whole season.
Yeah.
We've got
I think
to
a
look to
lot
the
of
next
players
game.
are probably
game
scared
at a
of
time.
saying something now, though, aren't you? Obviously,
because
you say something wrong, it gets blown up, doesn't it?
Everything gets clipped up. I was down in London at a game and I was speaking to a guy that I know that's a journalist, and he was saying that. So I was talking about like how good TalkSport is and the Sky Sports coverage and all that kind of stuff. But he was saying that like your Sky Sports pundits now, it's not good journalism. They're just literally doing it for clicks and for clips, and they're saying things so they know it'll go viral online. They're not bothered about reporting decent journalism on the game. And that's the same, because players are so scared. Like, imagine if you say something wrong, you say like...
It's horrible.
I get it now, putting stuff
one
on...
quote in it, something like that, and then it can be used against you as well.
Different context as well. Context is
exactly.
huge.
It's crazy. I did it on a video with Jack Clark. I sent some boots up to the lad at Sunderland, and I said, these are going up to Jack Clark, who's on loan at Sunderland from Tottenham. Like, and I didn't realise Tottenham had actually signed him on a permanent. He'd been on loan for like the last 2 years, but they just signed him on a permanent. And like the amount of comments like, on loan, are you stupid? And I'm like, made this like,
simple to say.
I'm like, bloody hell, like you get battered for like
banged up today on every transfer.
any one mistake. So like, you imagine a player.
People thrive off it though, don't they? As well,
I love it. It's
Yeah,
like
they do thrive
13-year-old
massively,
lads that don't know what they're doing, but Yeah,
I think you've got to learn to deal with stuff like that as well. Like especially as a player, obviously it probably like annoyed you, didn't it?
No, it was me. My missus picked it up on it. She was like, "Have you seen all the comments?" And I was like, "Oh shit, what have I done now?"
People online don't realise how much just a few little comments can affect someone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's just day and age, innit? But
there's so many like Harry Maguire. How he still stands on his own 2 feet.
And mentally, how strong he's been.
Yeah.
But it's his family. Like, can you imagine? He's got 2 brothers and a sister. Like, honestly, I don't know how they've read it, and like the grief he gets is unbelievable. He's England and Man United captain. Like, they must be thinking, "Wow, how proud of you are of him."
Yeah.
And then he just got battered.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how they deal with it, but yeah.
I would agree. I think it's hard. It must be harder on a player's family than it is on the players.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like my girlfriend was noticing it, so I don't care about like bad comments. Like I put a few TikToks up there. I don't care. Like, I used to do cold calling for a living. Like, I've been called every name. Like, I'm used to. I'm used to doing like kind of getting abused. But like for people, like when my girlfriend sees like a bit of a clip and she's like, "Did you see what he said about you?" And I'm like. It affects her more than it affects me.
Exactly,
But imagine like the player, especially when you've got.
It's just individual, isn't it? How certain things affect certain people. Well, obviously, as a player, probably the more you get. So probably with Maguire, he probably started getting battered when his form started dipping.
Yeah.
His skin probably got thicker as it went on. Whereas now it probably just does not affect him one bit. But I bet there was a point where.
I can't do.
I mean, his confidence went. You've seen that anyway.
Yeah.
But like you say, with the family and friends and mates or whatever, would they ever get used to it? Because it's not directly at them, but if it's someone you love and care about.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only imagine it. It was like
it'll affect their relationship because then they're like, "Oh, I've seen it, but has he seen it?" So
you probably wouldn't want to mention it.
Well, let's just talk about something else. But I don't know.
I think it's a real problem, probably not just in football, just in life
but
these days, isn't it? With social media,
free speech. If you argue the devil's advocate and you say like, well, everyone's entitled, you know, if the platform's allowing them to comment on stuff like that,
you just need to think about what you're saying, don't you? But
you can see why people or players or a lot of it, like celebrities, footballers, whatever, don't run their own Instagram and they just put up a generic picture of them playing in the game, saying 3 points. Thanks for the fans, and then that's it. You can see why they don't get on it at all. And
I don't blame them. I wouldn't either. If I was pro footballer, I wouldn't. So you don't really have like a huge social media following. Does that social media don't really interest you?
Yeah, well, obviously, like you do it for your mates, for your close friends, stuff like that. But yeah, when I was playing, I never had it. I mean, it weren't as big then, but obviously, even now, I'd probably be. I mean, it's a good thing. We probably encourage our players to have it because it's good for branding, for deals, stuff like that, to communicate with the fans in a good way.
Yeah.
But obviously you're going to be getting that at some point in your career. You're going to be getting battered, aren't you?
Yeah, of course.
Because you're not going to be the best player on the pitch. You're probably going to be one of the worst ones at one point. But you can't let that obviously stop you from doing something that's going to obviously positively affect what you're doing going forward. And I think as footballers, it's probably more good than bad.
See, that's what's good about the players that we've got is that a phone call conversation of what you've just said then for the last 5 minutes will just put the mind at rest and say, all right, it happens. Everyone's going to get it. You know, like I know, I can take that on board and learn with that, and that's what will help. You know, the players that we've got is that bit of experience on stuff like that. Not necessarily like how do you beat a fullback, but how do you deal with that off the pitch?
Yeah.
Or I've had my manager's gone off me a bit. How do I deal with that? Do I go in all guns blazing?
Yeah.
Rip up the contract, or do I go in a bit differently? Do I dig in at training? How long do I dig in for? It's stuff like that you can't teach or you can't learn.
I suppose that's why this partnership works quite well, because obviously you've got the player sort of aspect, but at the same time, a player nowadays, commercially is just as important nowadays. So you can bring the sort of business side of it where, like a brand or like a Boots, they wanted something, they've gone a bit cold on you. You can kind of bring in with that.
Yeah, massive. Well, obviously, with Alex's following as well, obviously the reach we can get for our players now is obviously a massive selling point as well.
I was just thinking then, like it does benefit players having a following or any sort of online presence, but it'll depend on the club and the manager. Because I bet Neil Warnock wanting to sign a player won't think. He's
I've got 20k followers on TikTok. If anyone else like, what's TikTok?
He doesn't have a blue tick, or like he's got a private account. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be bothered. But then I don't think any manager would be bothered, to be fair. But then your commercial department, like Charlie Austin going back to Swindon, like they'll have signed him commercially. Pogba, Man United.
Yeah.
Oh,
Commercially,
massive.
it's not.
Deal. Yeah, even if they think on the pitch it might not be the perfect signing, Pogba going back to United, for instance, was just massive, wasn't it? Like, it was everywhere, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
probably the effect that it had over the world for United was probably outweighed. Obviously, he didn't end up probably working out on the pitch, but financially it probably did for United anyway.
Same with Ronaldo. Look at the money Ronaldo made United.
Oh, mate. Did you say, like, Pogba paid that when he went for, like, 90 million or something? They earned that back in shirts on the first day or something.
Yeah, something stupid like that.
But it's like your players, like, non-league, even up to a championship player, I do think it'll benefit them being on social media because everyone's on it. Coaches are on it. Kit men are on it. You know, physios are on it. Scouts are on it. So if you pop up on a clip or like you sharing something that one of your mates might see, and then he might know someone, suddenly it bounces around,
Yeah, it
and
bounces
then
around,
that's how it'll get you a move. Or
That's like news, isn't it, these days? You find out all your news on probably social media these days, don't you?
you go straight to Twitter or you know, like all the news you don't.
Yeah.
You might Google the odd bit, but everything's up to date on there. But it's just if it's true or not.
I also had a few questions about sort of like your career as well, coming to the end of your career. So what you tend to find is with kind of pros is they drop into like the non-league system, but you didn't really drop into that. Was there any sort of reason for that, or was it more to do with like your injuries?
Yeah,
or?
it was the injury really. Obviously broke my leg at Bolton towards the end. And it was just kind of, I knew I couldn't get back to any sort of level of where I'd been at. So it was probably kind of half. You probably don't want to drop down because you know how hard it's going to be. It's not going to get any easier. Do you know what I mean? People think obviously you drop down. Obviously, technically, it gets a little bit easier because you're not expected to hit them heights again. Physically, like we said, with the fitness, there's no drop. What you need to be doing day to day, eating, sleeping right, recovering right, everything stays the same. So, yeah, I think it's probably kind of a blessing that I had an injury where it was kind of like, right, you are done. So I didn't have that decision to make. So I think that's why some players probably struggle a little bit, because you might be wanting to carry on, but your body might not be able to.
Yeah, that
so
must
but
be
if you
so
never have
tough.
that clear injury or whatever it might be, you know, you don't get a club, right? You can't carry on playing. You'll probably end up just keep dropping down, and you'll keep playing forever until you can't run anymore. But I had that kind of stop where you're injured, what you're going to do next. But luckily, I'd already planned on kind of this role anyway. So it was quite an easy transition, really. And it was actually what made it easier. It was when COVID kind of kicked off.
Oh, right.
So I got injured in the January.
Yeah.
In the March, they stopped fans coming into the games. So I was watching games, obviously injured, broken leg. I was thinking, this looks rubbish. Like, there's no atmosphere. Like, you're playing in empty stadiums. You can hear every kick of the ball. I was like, I'm not really missing this. Obviously, when the fans started coming back in, you start getting itchy feet a little bit. But yeah, it was just the injury with me.
You picked up. So the thing that's what I was conscious of is that when you retire, I'm saying I'm conscious of when I retired from playing professional football. I'd be conscious of is like. What do you do?
Top centre half and top goalkeeper.
You still play some league, mate.
Doncaster Saturday League's worst striker. Poor man's John Parkin, if there's such a thing. But
there's a poor man's John Parkin. I'm thinking.
When you retire, you think, oh, that'd be lovely. I'll have all the weekends. I'll be able to see the kids and the family and do this, do that. But 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, you kind of like, does the novelty wear off? Or like, I know we obviously missed the game and the banter in the changing rooms and the camaraderie, but what do you do to fill your time? Is it golf course? Is it this or that? I know you've got the agency, which is a massive part of it now, but it must be so daunting thinking you're a long time retired is the big saying, isn't it? But
I think, like, obviously I was kind of at that level where I had enough time to like start a new business without worrying, all right, I need some money coming in. So I've been lucky enough to earn a decent amount of money where I could probably chill for a year while I'm building something else. But I think why, like touching on what you said before, a lot of footballers don't go into the agency because it's so difficult to break in. You kind of go in, if you played in League 1, League 2 all your life, you can't afford to start a business that's not going to be earning money for 2 or 3 years, which you know, obviously, which is probably the realistic kind of work of starting an agency. And then if you played in the Premier League at the top level all your life, you've probably got enough money where you're just going to chill and you're going to be on the beach.
Yeah.
So there's probably that gap, that select amount of players where you've got enough time to build something, but you don't need to work straight away, which obviously I probably fell into. So I think that's why, one of the reasons why I've probably gone into it as well. And there's probably only a certain amount of players that can kind of, like I say, can afford to not have to go, right, I need to get a job, or I need to go into coaching to bring some money in straight away. Because like I say, if you've not earned mega money, then obviously when you finish your career, you're straight into the next thing, like whether it be coaching or
media or anything nowadays,
or trade, trying to stay in the game or whatever it is. So I think that probably narrows down the certain amount of players that go into probably being an agent.
There's some rogue stories I've seen, because I was thinking then, like, well, what does a mid-30s man go into? So you're in the situation where you need to earn money.
Yeah, that's had no career apart from football.
Yeah, and you've not got anything saved, you've lived your life, you've loved it, you've had a great 15 years, but now you're like, right, now what do I do? You could do media, coaching, scouting, but
a lot of it needs a lot of preparation. So you might have had to do your badges for 2, 3, 4 years.
Do you have to do qualifications for being an agent as well?
No. It is changing. I think there's going to be an exam soon. But to go into that was just literally getting a licence. So that is why it's easier. But I always said that the FA should push that on players a little bit more, where it was never mentioned when you come into the end. A lot of it was the coaching, which a lot of people go into. But like I say, you have to go to like summer camps for 2-3 weeks at a time every year before you can go into that.
Wow, it's a lot of preparation for something where you don't even know if you enjoy.
That you think. I said it to one of the lads that we had. I said, like, well, are you looking at planning for the, in 10 years' time when you? It's like, no. Why would I do that? And I thought, what a horrible way to look at it. But then I thought, actually, he's a professional footballer.
Yeah.
He's got 10 years to graft and not even think about the next, And when you're in the game, I guess you just think like, this is everything I've got. This is all I can do. Because you've trained all your life to get there, and then suddenly you get there. You're not going to start thinking, "Oh, what can I do after?"
Well, that's kind of the finding the balance in it of giving everything and all your focus being on being a footballer. But then, if something happens where you're not good enough or you get injured at 21, 22, if you've only been focusing on that, because you do, I heard it when I was 18, 19. So, like, do your education, plan, do your coaching badges early. If you do fall out the game, you've got something to back up, go on to. And I was always like, no, I'm going to be a footballer. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to do everything I can to be a footballer, but probably statistically wise, probably 9 out of 10 players at that 21, 22 probably end up being out the game.
Yeah.
And they've not done them things. So that's where I think there's a lot of probably struggle with footballers coming out of the game.
You get the odd ones that will have invested in a bit of property. They might have like 1 or 2 houses that they don't live in that they can rent out, or like, I know Stephen Fletcher, he's up at Dundee now. I think.
Bloody Fletcher.
He's always had like a car sales company, I think it was. But you hear the odd player that's got stuff on the side, but it's only ever football and maybe a bit of property.
Yeah, usually.
But I think I saw Paddy Kenny the other day shared that. And I get the feeling he might have been a player that didn't put any aside or invest it wisely.
I'd love to meet. I bet Paddy Kenny is a great pint. I bet he'd be great for one beer with him.
Well, then I've seen him out and about in Sheffield a few times, and it's
more than 1 pint.
I've seen him. I was in a pub. I won't tell at the end, but I was in a pub with my daughter. Oh, that sounds good. On a Saturday with my daughter, one of my mates having some food at about midday. And then the mate I was with is one of the managers at a bar in Sheffield, and he texts me at like 1:30 saying, Paddy's still out. I've just seen him rolling around on the street with another lad scrapping. So I thought, all right, that's not good. But so he now runs he's just started up like a car removal company that transports cars all around the country. Like, you just get into different things, and like, it's who you know. It's the kind of person you are. If you're a social, nice, kind person that made friends with everyone, you'll get an opportunity outside.
Yeah, 100%.
They'll want your help. You'll want theirs, and then suddenly you get in a relationship where you can start to become similar to this, I guess. Like I know
Yeah.
I've not been able to bring too much yet, but it's just business outside of football, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to think about it at some point, I think.
100%. I want to end on a few kind of quick fire sort of traditional sort of questions. First of all, I had about 3 questions about your golfing, so I need to ask it. Why is it that footballers kind of go into golf? Why is it always golf? Is it due to like the time you can spend into it, or?
I don't know really. I mean, I've always played a bit of golf, but only in the summer when it starts getting nice and warm. But I mean, a lot of footballers love it. I know, like I've played with some players that are just like play like 2-3 times a week. 'Cause once it starts getting warmer, or even every day.
That's mental.
But yeah,
It's perfect. Finish
Apparently
training.
you're not very good either, I've been told.
wow. Oh, actually, I'm not as good as you. But I know where you're coming from because there's a lad in there who sent you a message, but he's been dealt with actually. So we'll see what
Been murdered.
on the course.
Yeah, it's one of them. You finish training at 2 or something.
Yeah.
What are you going to do all afternoon? Well, golf course.
I think it's probably more when you're a little bit younger. Maybe you finish training and there's a couple of lads really that all live maybe on their own. And you're like, well, what do we do with our time now? It's a nice day. Go down to the driving range.
Go out there.
Or,
See, interesting. Sometimes get that
Sometimes.
when you're recording. Big Brighton fan I've heard up in Glossop.
just the time, I think.
Yeah.
Being able to do so.
Fascinating, because you always see all the time like Bale obviously being the most famous.
Yeah.
Just a few kind of quick fire questions. Like you've played with some like fantastic players. Like who would you say is like probably who would you most like to go for a pint with?
I've been for a pint with most of them.
I was going to say you can expect
All
that.
three lunatics.
But who's like that good pint? Obviously we talk about Paddy Kenny then.
There's 2 types of pints. There's 2 pints watching the football, and then there's 10 pints.
Yeah.
On the dance floor
there's a few
after.
lunatics. Lee Cattermole was always a good
Really?
a good drinker. Just saying.
That's a shock.
He was. No, I just said he was true professional.
Oh no, he is. But when
but
when he had a drink,
he seems
you
like
knew
a
it.
lad, doesn't he?
Oh, class.
Yeah.
There's he's a bit of a lunatic, but there's a few. Like you see lads like Christmas do when it's like probably 1 or 2 nights out, and the Christmas do is a big one.
Yeah.
And that's where everyone just kind of goes a little bit mental. You
got
see,
an excuse.
it's usually always like the quiet ones that you see that don't say much and then just absolutely mental when they go on a night out.
And you're like, here we go.
Where is he come from?
It's often the staff, I bet, as well. Like the kit man will tend
Oh,
to get a bit
a
rowdy.
few of the staff love it. Well, when they're away so like you play someone away, and you obviously stay over in the hotel, obviously players like bed at 9-10 o'clock, the staff are like down there, aren't they, at the bar, drinking
Really?
a few, you see them in the next day and they like get up and you're like, wow, what have they been doing? Just using it as like a night out every time we go away.
Thinking. Excellent.
Well, so like other sort of players you play with, like who was like that one most skillful player? Like obviously with you being a winger,
Yeah.
like you've obviously got that left side who needs to kind of counterpart your
Yeah.
directness. Was there any like players out there that really stood out to you that you played with who were like the most skillful?
Yeah, well, to be fair, obviously I played with some top players at Sunderland, like Jermaine Defoe, like Stephen Fletcher was there, John O'Shea, Wes Brown, obviously was at United just before Sunderland. But at Brighton, we had some like kind of random signings really. Like Wayne Bridge came, who was unbelievable, who'd played for England before coming to
Meant to
Brighton.
be a good guy, Wayne Bridge as well.
He's a
like,
top guy,
he's-
Matthew Upson, centre-half, who's played for Arsenal, he came to Brighton.
yeah, he played West Ham as well,
But
wasn't he?
yeah, there was a few like foreign players that came, and one of them was Vicente, who used to play for Valencia.
Oh, you were Spanish, yeah.
Winger. And
Remember
he
off
was
FIFA.
like, and he was like, he was just completely different to an English player.
Yeah.
So everyone was just like, how good is he?
Yeah.
Like his touch and everything. I think he was like kind of coming to the end of his career. It was like mid-30s, but he'd had a lot of injuries. So pace, he had none. But you tried to get the ball off him in training. He's just the way he just used his body and stuff like that. He was like, you'd never seen it before. So he's probably the one that stood out as like, this is something I've never seen before.
Who were your strikers at Brighton and Watford?
Would it have been
and
Murray?
Sunderland?
Oh, with Murray.
I played with Glenn Murray at Rochdale actually. One of the strikers was Craig McHale-Smith, who was flying.
Craig
at,
McHale-Smith had
Peterborough. He didn't really kind of probably do himself justice at Brighton. He had a lot
He
of
scored a
injuries.
lot of football league goals, didn't he?
Yeah.
Peterborough and was it Peterborough?
What
Yeah,
else
he-
was
he-
at?
he took
Peterborough.
Peterborough up,
He
didn't
just
he?
scored about 40 goals a season.
Yeah,
for about
yeah.
3 or 4
Aaron
years.
McLean up front as well at Peterborough.
We played with Leonardo Ojoa, who was at Brighton, and he won the league with Leicester a couple of years later, so he was class. And I mean, we had some really good players at Brighton at that time for the Championship as well.
Sunderland was Defoe, Fletcher, Connor Wick.
Yeah, Connor Wickham was there. Lee Cattermole, Larson.
Good time. Wow.
Oh, Larson! Now he was good with the ball at his feet, wasn't he? Seb Larson.
Yeah. So there's a fight. Sunderland was obviously good, but probably as a Premier League team, probably just what you'd expect.
Yeah,
Whereas obviously Brighton, that stood out because these were players that had played in the Premier League or played in Champions League abroad. So they was coming to Brighton. I was like, wow, we've got a good team now.
Yeah. You get that bug, don't you, where you're like, we're going up here.
You get that sense of when you've got a good team, depending on which league you're in. And obviously at that Brighton time was just
Do you think
so
that's
enjoyable.
a big factor of the camaraderie in the squad? I was speaking to a guy that's at Huddersfield, and he was saying that like last season they got to the playoff final in the Championship, and now the bottom of the Championship this season. Yeah. He was saying it's the camaraderie. Like last season, they were out every week, like as a squad.
It
doing things.
It can make a massive difference. Obviously, you need good players on the pitch, but it's like that being happy again, isn't it? If you've got a team that's happy and going out together, working hard for each other, whereas you've got a team that doesn't really get on or doesn't click on the pitch or off the pitch, it's going to have a massive effect.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, well, you look at England. Probably the prime example of that. Like England at the moment, they're all mates.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they love each other. They proper live for it.
Yeah, it's like that. Obviously, really players who are not playing are still happy for the players that are playing.
Yeah,
whereas obviously a lot of the time, if you're on the bench or something, you see teams where they're probably like not happy if the teammate does well, because obviously you are kind of competing for one spot. But if you can get that, I think that's why Gareth Southgate's got it perfect. He seems like a perfect man manager, where he keeps everyone happy and they're all supporting each other even when they're not playing. Yeah, which is a massive part of it.
Fantastic. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there because that camera turned off 5 minutes ago. But I'm not stopping this. But yeah, massive thanks for coming down and big thanks for your long drive as well coming over.
No, I loved it.
Can't get rid of him now. He'll be back every week.
Next week.
Who we got on next? But yeah, that's class. So a final shout out. So it's Web Sports Management, isn't it, on Instagram? Is that right?
That's the one, yeah.
Perfect. And then obviously
ARF
Football.
Don't need any introduction.
Most of my followers have come from you, so I mean, it's a thanks from me. But
I loved it, mate.
But it was a great insight. Really enjoyed that episode. Also on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Spotify, give us a 5-star review. That always helps. And we shall see you next week. Thank you.
Perfect. Cheers, mate.